important to understand how, to me, I find it fascinating that if you look at the histories of other civilizations that fell to Muslim rule, Persia, our neighboring civilization, the Farsi civilization, Zoroastrian civilization, was obliterated by Muslim conquest. The Egyptians were obliterated. What was Mesopotamia completely ceased to exist. And interestingly, even when the Mongols first defeated the Muslims, the Mongols were Buddhist or shamanistic, but were eventually converted. I mean, even the kings were converted to Islam, both in Russia, what is now Russia, as well as in Iraq and Iran. They were all converted to Islam. Whereas in India, this Indic or Hindu civilization survived, and I think we owe a huge debt to Vijayanagara. And then thereafter, after the defeat at Talikota, there was the emergence of the Marathas. Interestingly, the Marathas, the Shivaji's father was a general in the Bijapur army.
Yeah, that's right.
And he had 2 Jagirs. He was given 2 Jagirs, one Pune and one Bangalore. I mean, if you think about today's India, these are the 2 fonts of entrepreneurial India. Bangalore and Pune. Bangalore and Pune were the Jagirs of Shahaji, the father of Shivaji Maharaj. And of course, he was still a feudatory, but he became, his successors, Vyankoji, became independent and ruled initially Bangalore and also Thanjavur all the way to Tamil Nadu. And they continued to rule until 1947, the successors of the Marathas. Now, they maintained, they were a quintessentially Hindu civilization. If you look, even Jawaharlal Nehru in Discovery of India says that it was a Hindu Swaraj, it was a Hindu nationalist revolt against the Mughal Empire that Shivaji led. And to my mind, what is interesting, and here we come to modern India, even during British rule, the British never entirely defeated the Marathas. And thankfully, as a result, in Gwalior, in Indore, in the Malwa region, in Baroda, and across Gujarat, but all of these, the Gaikwads, the Holkars, and the Scindias maintained their independence to a great extent. They were treaty allies of the British, and Hindu civilization flourished in those realms and in other Hindu realms, including the Rajputs. The Rajputs, of course, were used to making alliances. They made with the Mughals and quickly made with the British, and they made with the British partly to keep the Marathas out. They chose the British over the Marathas, and so did Patiala and Nabha and Kapurthala. They chose the British over Ranjit Singh, who was establishing a new Sikh empire, and that Sikh empire encompassed all of Pakistan, all the way to all of what is now Jammu and Kashmir, including Ladakh, and what is now Haryana. So all of that, and what is now Indian Punjab. So a huge territory. There was the Sikh Empire. The British were wary of them, but there were some Sikh kings who chose to be British allies. So the British got lucky in that sense. But we are lucky, to my mind, we are lucky that these 3 great empires existed. The first Vijayanagara, after its defeat, within less than a century, the Marathas emerged, and Marathas completely dominated India for a century before the British arrived. This aspect is completely obliterated from modern histories of India. The fact that the Marathas dominated, and what is also, to my mind, interesting about the Marathas is that a French chronicler says that in the Maratha realms, which is most of India, 2/3 of India, the ruler is poor. Ruler isn't very rich, but the people are prosperous because they encourage commerce. I think this is partly because they had a dharmic conception of taxation. They taxed they had 1/6 of tax. You're not supposed to take. So our current government is not very dharmic. We don't, 41% income tax is not dharmic. 17% is closer to dharmic. You know, the new corporate tax on
yes, indeed,
on industry.
Mr. Basu.
So Marathas were like that, you know. But so and they also said, this French chronicler said that the British realms, the British are rich, the people are poor.
I see.
So I think that is again obliterated. But
yeah, indeed. So Mr. Basu, there are certain other aspects of the Vijayanagara polity, Vijayanagara Empire, that I'd like to touch upon again as a student of history. So to continue dilating upon the Hindu aspects of Vijayanagara polity, I call to the mind this very interesting monograph by Bertenstein. And Bertenstein has actually worked on the Chola Empire, the Chola polity and the Vijayanagara Empire, and he has theorized these as ritual segmentary states, interestingly, not as centralized bureaucratic administrations, but as ritual segmentary states. For instance, regarding the Chola polity, he says that in the Chola realm, the Chola king, the great Chola, exercised his suppressive authority only in the capital city or in the vicinity of the capital city, that is Tanjavur. The rest of the realm was actually, he doesn't use this phrase, but I'm paraphrasing him here. The rest of the polity was integrated through a ritual and religious imagination. The polity was divided into these ethnic territories called nadus, each ruled by a dominant chief or ruling lineage, and the dominant chief of the nadu, the ruling lineage of the nadu, imitated the role of the Chola emperor as the supreme patron of cows and Brahmins. Similar, very likely, as he puts it, was the case in the Vijayanagara Empire. And an interesting part of the Vijayanagara Empire, interesting aspect again of the Vijayanagara Empire, was that the Vijayadashami festival every year was of supreme significance there. And it was an occasion on which the king, the Vijayanagara ruler, ritually integrated the realm. It was performed, I mean, the ceremony was conducted on a magnificent scale. All the Nayakas were in attendance, and various sports, various kinds of athletic competitions were conducted on the occasion. The king gave away a lot of wealth, demonstrated a lot of wealth, and thus, you know, in a sort of way, in a ritual framework, he broadcast his authority across the realm. So this is another aspect of the Vijayanagara Empire which has to be taken note of. And this has been studied by a historian, by an anthropologist again, Nicholas Dirks, as I remember, at this moment. And moving on to, you know, how Hindu society survived, all the vicissitudes, all the invasions. Well, the thing about Hindu society is that, you know, it is not a state-dependent society, as you pointed out. It was in case of Persia, classical ancient Persia. It is not a society engineered or in that sense, you know, organized by the state. It is to a great extent, a self-governing society. It is this, you know, characteristic, this aspect of a civil society to itself. You know, if I recall correctly, Habermas, he says that it is an autonomous realm between the population and the state. So similarly, you know, Hindu society has this element of autonomy to itself in relation to the state. It is self-governing because it is organized in the form of jatis, and jatis govern themselves through their inherited culture, values, mores, etc. So even if the state ceases to be, the society still survives. It is not dependent on the state in that sense. The state only upholds its values, mores, and provides some sort of ritual religious patronage. So this society can survive the destruction of the state that encases it, so to speak, very well. And moving on to these other instances of resistance that you touched upon. Well, the thing about them is that, you know, all these instances of resistance, be they the Marathas, the Jats, the Sikhs, etc., were expressed in a cultural framework. We find them being expressed in a cultural framework, and this is something that has been pointed out by Shekhar Bandyopadhyay in his History of Modern India, Placido Partition, if I remember correctly. So talking of the Sikhs, you know, I would say that the Sikh resistance was actually a continuation of the Jat resistance, which emerged in North India in 1669. There was a massive Jat uprising in Mathura and its vicinity in 1669. It was led by a local Jat zamindar called Gokul Jat. It was defeated, of course, at Talpi. There was a massive showdown between Aurangzeb and the Jats at Talpi. Now, one ought to remember about the Sikh resistance is that it was led primarily by the Jats. The Khalsa Panth, which was founded just 30 years later by Guru Gobind Singh Ji in 1699, was dominated by the Jats. So Sikh resistance or Khalsa resistance in this sense was a continuation of the resistance which emerged in 1669. Again, same with the Maratha resistance. It was led, dominated by the Kunbis, the peasantry, the higher peasantry, the upper peasantry of Maratha society. And again, it was expressed, as we see, in a religious cultural framework.